What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 2 of the Hoop Venue podcast. My name's Tyler. I'm here with my great friend Sean, and today we're going to be previewing the 2025 NBA season way before we should be. Just getting everything out there. We're going to be completely wrong this entire episode, but I feel like we're both pretty confident in what we've got to talk about today. I don't know about you. How you feeling, Sean, about the upcoming season, and how are you feeling about your takes today?
I'm excited to get every single thing I say today absolutely wrong and look back at this in January and say, man, Sean, you were an idiot. But no, excited for episode 2, Tyler, and excited to dive into some more takes about these teams heading into the season.
For sure. I'm most excited for the comments that are going to call out everything we get wrong and then come back to those comments. Like, they're going to come back to their own comments and probably like 6 months from now and be like, see, I told you, you were wrong. And we're going to get like 2 things right, and we're both going to victory lap those 2 things, and it's going to be absolutely phenomenal. This is going to be a great episode. But we can just jump right into the sauce and get the people riled up with some hot takes. I want to ask you, give me some of your hottest takes for the upcoming season.
So I suck at hot takes, not only with accuracy, and with like coming up with them. Because to me, at least, how I view like my takes, at least, it's not. I don't view any of my takes as like really spicy because I believe them a lot of the stuff I say. So I don't view it as a hot take. But the one take, and I did this. I didn't get to finish my preseason power ranking series, but one of the teams I did get to discuss, and one of the things I threw out there was like, man, what if like this guy in year 2 just becomes this all-star? So my hot take is that the Charlotte Hornets has 2 all-stars this season. It's LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller. LaMelo, I think, is the one where everybody's going to say, okay, that makes sense if he's healthy. Brandon Miller is the one where everybody's going to be like, ooh, that's kind of early, or I don't know about that one, Sean. But it's ironic, and there's not a player-to-player comparison, but in terms of, like, usage comparison, it is kind of unique. It's ironic how Brandon Miller's favorite player is Paul George. And if you look at the way they use Brandon Miller, like, that's kind of like Clippers Paul George, where we're going to get him off some off-screen stuff, let him create a pick and roll, let him, like, just find every way possible to get him touches. And I think it's really, really cool how they do use that. I think Charlotte and Atlanta are going to be teams that are better than people expect. And that Charlotte's not on my list for one of our later topics. But these 2 guys, they play really, really well off each other. I think it's a blessing in disguise that Brandon Miller got to go through what he went through last season without LaMelo, where he kind of had to figure it out at some stretches last season, where he was getting coverages with 2 on the ball, and he had to hit that short roll read or make plays for himself and for his teammates. Now you bring LaMelo Ball back into the fold, should make things easier for Brandon Miller, who, again, Charlotte fans, I guess I'll apologize and say I was wrong on for having him so third in my draft board that year. But, that's kind of my hot take, if you will. That Charlotte walks out of this season with 2 all-stars.
I like that, and I like how you brought up the way he's used, because I believe about 60%, maybe even higher, of his shots were assisted on last year. I think about half of his 2s, and then, of course, most of his 3s coming off screens and whatnot. And when you say Brandon Miller becomes an all-star, my mind immediately goes to, what does the pathway to him becoming an all-star actually look like? When you say the Hornets have 2 all-stars, that pretty much suggests that the Hornets are going to be a very good team, because teams that have 2 all-stars are typically like 45 wins minimum. Like, sometimes teams win 50 games and then don't have 2 all-stars. And so that's really interesting to me, because it could be a thing where they just are ahead of schedule, and a lot of these young guys just pop right away. And Brandon Miller, play style wise, the pathway to get there is like I said, I think 91% or something of his 3s were assisted on.
90.8% of his 3s, 65% overall of his shots. Shots were assisted.
91% of his 3s were assisted on, and I think he attempted like 7 a game total. 7 threes a game. If he can get that number up to like
7.7 per 75.
Yeah. So if he gets that number up to like 9 a game, 2 extra threes, and both of those are pull-ups, that could be the type of thing where it's like, okay, maybe 75, 80% of his threes are assisted on. He's taking 9 of them at a near 40% clip. That could push him up to a 23 point per game scorer alone. Completely disregarding any potential 2-point leap as a slasher, as a mid-range scorer, getting to the line a bit more, because that's one of his weaknesses right now, is getting to the line. And I think that's a really interesting take to look out for, because you look at the Magic. I mean, Paolo had a very, very good rookie season. But I think going into last season, if you would have predicted Paolo to be an all-star, it probably would have been considered a hot take. It would have been like maybe a year early, maybe 2 years early. And then he did that, and he was even getting some All-NBA buzz by the end of the year. And it's just really interesting. But again, it's because the Magic nearly won 50 games. It's like we got to give them an all-star. So for the Hornets, it could be, I think there's two pathways to Brandon Miller becoming an all-star. I think the Hornets catch everyone by surprise. LaMelo and Brandon Miller are just this nasty duo, and they got to be rewarded because you also got to keep in mind the East is a lot weaker at the end of the all-star. Like, I remember there was an open all-star spot after an injury. I can't remember who got injured, but Miles Turner was one of the finalists. So that's the player we're talking about. Like, that's the caliber of player we're talking about that could be an all-star.
Yeah.
And so that's a pathway. The other pathway to me is LaMelo gets hurt again, and then Brandon Miller has to explode for them to even stay afloat. And then he's like a 25, 26 point per game scorer, and he gets that nod because a big part of All-Star as well is not just what you do impact or production-wise, it's also your reputation. And Brandon Miller already has established himself as like an up-and-coming all-star. So if he's even close, he'll get the nod over someone like random name Jared Allen. Like if it's between Brandon Miller or Jared Allen, like Brandon Miller will get that. Yeah, 100%. So I like that take. That's an awesome one. And it actually kind of created a hot take in my head because I wasn't really planning to drop a hot take.
Okay.
But when you said
just threw me under the bus. Great job.
Throw you under the bus. Yeah, throw you under the bus. I just wanted you to just get all the heat, and I was just going to ride off it. But funny enough, when you said a second-year player being a first-time All-Star, I thought you were going to say someone completely different, and it like came in my head. It was Amen Thompson. I was I don't think Amen Thompson's going to be an All-Star, but I would have seen the vision. I would have seen the vision.
I see the vision.
And I'm actually, we're going to talk about the Rockets a little bit later when we get later on. Yeah. But there's a pathway that I think to Amen becoming an all-star that I want to talk about in our next segment. So I'll hold off on it for now, but I just wanted to get that out there because I thought that's who you were going to talk about.
To wrap up with the Brandon Miller discussion, I'm glad you brought up the pull-up three-point volume. It's kind of funny how Brandon Miller's like last 2 seasons of basketball have went, where you play the extremist version of basketball in Alabama, where it's you shoot a mid-range jumper, you're getting subbed out immediately, to where last year he didn't shoot a bunch of pull-up threes. Last season, like his pull-up threes to pull-up mid-range, it was like 2-1 in favor of mid-range pull-ups, right? Where it's great. I'm glad that he's really showing up. He was incredibly efficient, 48.8% pull-up middies last season. But let's scale up the pull-up three volume just a little bit. He's this dynamic catch-and-shoot threat. He doesn't have this overwhelming like burst with the ball in his hands. But like if you let him kind of play off of LaMelo, where I'm attacking a closeout now, or I'm a slasher in this situation, that's kind of how you got the dunk over Miles Turner the other night, where I'm playing off ball. I don't even know how the pass got over to him. It might have been off a LaMelo skip, if I recall correctly. But then, cool, I'm just going to attack the defensive rotation, and I'm going to boom on you, because he does have that explosiveness above the rim. But go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wanted to kind of add to what you're saying, because when you said he's not that explosive, and that kind of like limits his rim volume, so you kind of want a lot of those mid-range jumpers turned into threes. I was going to say, like, I love his mid-range game. It's so surgical. I made pretty much an entire video just on his mid-range game. But in the preseason, he's been like launching in threes at a high clip, and it looks good. Like he just the confidence level, like it's almost like it kind of feels. I don't want him to go completely into Jason Tatum.
I saw a tweet about this. Was it your tweet?
It wasn't, but I know what you're talking about. Where it's like going in the Jason Tatum direction, where it's like we're gonna phase the mid range game completely out. I think Brandon Miller
14 pull up threes to 4 pull up middies in the preseason.
Love it, and I don't necessarily love it because I don't want the mid range game phased out. Because like I said, Tatum kind of had to have it phased out to some extent because he was never efficient with it. Brandon Miller was already an elite mid range scorer as a rookie, which is rare territory. But if he can, like you said, turn that ratio, if it's 2-1, have it 2-1 in favor of pull-up threes. Sure. That can just make his efficiency so much better. He can get them off at a much higher volume. But to me, he gets the Paul George comp a lot. I almost kind of view it like, because I look at the length, I look at the lack of burst. I always think Paul George was a very good athlete. Like young Paul George is kind of a crazy athlete on an echelon that Brandon Miller is just not at. Even I don't want to say Brandon Miller's a bad athlete, just not Paul George athlete.
With the ball in his hands, he's not Paul George. Where
and
Paul George in his prime was like
right
top percentile athlete.
Exactly. And the way I kind of feel about Brandon Miller is if he can add the pull-up three, it's almost like Brandon Ingram with a pull-up three. Is kind of how I feel about it. Like, if Brandon Miller can work on, like, Ingram has mastered pace. He's mastered using his shoulders and stuff to create space and without being a super strong player. Brandon Miller kind of has a similar frame, very lengthy, kind of skinny, relies on his giant strides to get where he wants to go in the defense. And Brandon Ingram, when he was on the Lakers especially, was a very, very good slasher. He got to the rim a lot. And he was never, like, a plus burst kind of guy, really. So I kind of think like that's the pathway. Like Brandon Miller, take a lot of Ingram's tools, working on the shoulder bumps, working on the stride length to get to the rim, the surgical mid-range game, but also adding that dimension of a pull-up three of off-screen threes. And he's just I love Brandon Miller. He's going to be a ridiculous weapon as a scorer in this league.
Yeah. Charles Lee says all the right stuff too. Like he's awesome. And Hornets are going to be a league pass team for sure.
So you kind of hinted at it. A little bit with you said the Hornets aren't going to be on one of our other topics. That other topic was teams that we expect to overperform. You kind of hinted at you think the Hornets will overperform, but you went with some other teams. So I want to ask you, who do you think is going to be the biggest overperformer relative to expectations next season?
So this is relative to where I've seen them on my timeline and where I think some national media has them at, because there's been a lot of bad PR about this team, I think, since the end of last season. But let's not overthink the Denver Nuggets, please. Like, I've seen them way too low on some of these lists. They still have the best player on the planet in Jokic. They still have, in terms of fit, like the best three-man combination in basketball with Jokic, Jamal, and then literally pick any one of the other two in Aaron Gordon or Michael Porter Jr.
Yeah.
And my take, I kind of all summer has been, and I know it's preseason, you don't want to look into it too much, but my take all summer has been let one or two of Julian Strawther, Christian Brown, and Payne Watson turn into something, and Denver's right back to being what they've been. Yes. I mean, as long as they've been healthy. And as Christian Brown hasn't played particularly well yet, but Julian Strawther's looked like a stud. I mean, as he is. He's been awesome in preseason. Payne Watson plays his role well. I had this running joke, I guess, that I think Denver fans are eventually going to be tired of the Westbrook experiment. But I think for Denver, I think he does provide some value. Like, Denver is going to be right back to where they have been for the past 3 seasons, fully healthy now. Jamal's playing with a chip on his shoulder. I'm glad they didn't overthink that situation and just paid him. You just won a title a calendar year ago. Yeah. Denver is going to be right back where they have been for the past 3 years. This is still the second best team in the West. Let's not overthink things, folks.
I was really hoping you'd bring them up because I love talking about the Nuggets, and I totally agree. Like, relative to where I've been seeing them placed and kind of talked about, they're a team that it's almost like people are overstating what KCP. I don't want to downplay what KCP brought to them. Like, he was an awesome fit, awesome player. I think people are, for one, overstating what he did for them in the regular season. He was kind of like, he was maybe their best defender in the regular season between him and Gordon, take your pick. Sure. And then their third best 3-point shooter. And besides that, didn't really bring much value. That's kind of what it was. He's a typical 3-and-D guy. And that matters more in the playoffs than it does in the regular season. Like, you can really fill that void in the regular season with anything. Like you said, Christian Brown. Christian Brown can mimic some of that defense, some of the physicalities, not the same caliber of shooter. That matters in the playoffs. But in the regular season, teams aren't actively scheming Christian Brown out of sets. Like, it's not the same type of game planning, same type of approach. I think people forget that Jokic dragged that 2022 team to nearly 50 wins.
With Will Barton as his
Will
Monte Morris.
Will Barton was second on the team in field goal attempts that season. and they won 49 games, I think, or 48 games or something like that.
Yeah.
Jokic is going to play damn near all 82, if not all 82. So your floor is just so high. And I think another thing people are mixing up in their head is Russell Westbrook's replacing KCP. No, he's replacing Reggie Jackson. And I don't know about you, I prefer Westbrook over Reggie Jackson in pretty much every situation. Just from defense alone, but like even just Westbrook's ability to push pace, his ability to unlock bigs. Like I think Jokic might have his most efficient season as a scorer as a result of Westbrook hitting him in those short mid-range sweet spots. I agree with you. I don't know if you said this concretely, but a lot of overthinking. Like people want to be ahead of the curve.
Let's not overthink Denver.
Yes. People
Like,
want to be
they're the
ahead of the
second best
curve.
team in the West.
They're definitely they're I couldn't agree more. They're such a good team. They damn near have the exact same team as they had when they won the championship, and people are completely overthinking.
They lost Bruce Brown, who, I mean, okay, and had one great playoff run. They got him paid, sure, and then KCP, who didn't even really play well in the playoffs.
I totally forgot to mention that. I went on my rant about KCP in the regular season. In the Minnesota series, he was
bad.
Non-existent on both ends. He could not stick with Anthony Edwards. And that's kind of his main trait. His second trait is his three-point shooting. I don't have the numbers in front of me. It wasn't pretty. He was not making threes. Yeah, you pull it up, it's going to be like 17% or something crazy. And the problem is KCP's value. See, there's two types of shooters in the league. There's the shooters that their value comes from their spacing regardless of how they're hitting. That's Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson, like if he's 0 for 10 in the play-in game, he's getting guarded like he's 10 for 10. KCP is not that type of shooter. He's the type of shooter that you need to hit those shots. And when he's not hitting those shots.
Sorry to cut you off. He shot 37% from three in the Minnesota series, but overall in the playoffs, he shot 32.7 because he
37
really
is a lot better than I remember. So I'll take the L on that one. But I do remember. I can't remember if it was
Game 7.
6. Was it Game 7? One of the games he was just not making a single shot, and it
2
was
for
like
7 in Game 7. He played really well in Game 5. He had 16 in Game 5, but
and that was the must win 2-2.
Yeah, that was 2-2, but 1 for 6 game 4. Shot a combined 4 for 10 games 1 and 2. But then, I mean, Game 6 and 7, where they got just blasted in Game 6, and then Minnesota came back Game 7. He shot a combined 4 for 13 in Game 6 and 7, and shot a combined 3 for 10 from 3 in Game 6 and 7.
And I was going to say, there's no 2-point scoring with him, so that's it. Like, if his 3-point shot's not falling, that's it. He's not producing offensively. And one last point, I don't want to just stick on the Nuggets, but a lot of the overthinking, to me, comes from the fact that people view it as the Nuggets went from a champion to a second-round exit. The Nuggets were a blown 20-point lead away from being the favorites in the Western Conference Finals. They would have been the favorites in the Western Conference Finals. And I just feel like that got erased from everyone's memory when they blew that lead. Like, that was it.
And they ran into the one team that probably had the best shot at beating them in the West.
Yeah.
This is enough Denver hype for me as the Laker fan here.
Yeah. No, 100% agree. And while we're on the topic of top teams in the West, I'll give you one of my overperformers. I think the Memphis Grizzlies are going to perform better than pretty much anyone thinks. So you said you took the approach of like looking at your timeline, how people are viewing. I actually went a different route. So this is going to create, I think, an interesting conversation. I was more so looking at betting odds. I was like, where do sports books think these like over-unders are set at? And I believe the Grizzlies on DraftKings were 46 or 47.5. And I'm like, when Ja Morant's there, they're a 50-win team. That's just what they are. Regardless of how it translates to the playoffs, they're a 50-win
insane regular season floor.
Yes.
Kind of similar to Denver, where like, let's not overthink it, insane regular season floor.
Yeah, and so you compare the 2022 Grizzlies to the 2025 now Grizzlies, or even 2023 Grizzlies, like one of those installments of the Grizzlies to now, I feel like they're considerably better. Like, from a standpoint of point of attack defense, in the Minnesota series, they were pretty much relying on Ja, Bane, and Dylan Brooks to be their 3-point of attack defenders. Ja was pretty much playing free safety to hide away from the ball. I remember it was the Minnesota series, there was a game that the Grizzlies lost because Patrick Beverley was hunting for Ja Morant on switches and killing him in isolation. And I remember he was getting clowned on like the analytical side of Twitter. Like everyone was like, "This is basically just Trae Young of the West," only for Ja Morant to just go stupid the rest of the playoffs. But I think people underestimate how crazy it is to go from that type of point of attack defense, over reliance on a clear offensive negative in Dillon Brooks, to go into guys like Vince Williams, Marcus Smart, who are better. I wouldn't say Vince is a better defender than Brooks, but Smart definitely is. And also aren't offensive liabilities. Like Marcus Smart's a very good passer. He'll make some threes. He'll shoot way too many threes, but he'll make some. Yeah, like I said, very good passer, really good connector. And then Vince Williams, like, he's not going to try and do too much like Dillon Brooks. Dillon Brooks was basically like the Marcus Smart tendencies, but not even half the passer or shooter. And then it was like, okay, now we're just giving a guy like Dillon Brooks. Like I remember in one of those playoff series, he averaged like 17 field goal attempts. Why is Dillon Brooks shooting the ball?
Might have been the Lakers series because we were like begging him to shoot.
Yeah, like why is Dillon Brooks shooting the ball 17 times? And keep in mind, this is like he was like their highest minute player on a 50-win team. So you also incorporate Zach Edey into the mix, who I think is going to be really, really good right away. And say what you will about Zach Edey translating to the playoffs, he's going to be a very good regular season player. I think that's pretty much unanimous for this season. Yep. So again, that gives them a higher floor. Brandon Clark's back. Gigi Jackson isn't even 20 yet and is already looking like a capable 20-point per game scorer. There's just so many variables. They have a deep team. They have a lot of good offensive players. They have a lot of good defensive players. They have a great coach. I don't see how people aren't putting them in that upper echelon of the West.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just going to start with this. Again, let's not overthink this team. Ja Morant, I said it in last episode, may be an idiot off the court with some of his social media actions, but he's a top 20 player when healthy, and this team has consistently been a 50-ish win team whenever he's here. I guess my one concern with Memphis is, can this team please stay healthy? Yes. They already have, Ja, twisted his ankle or something in preseason. Gigi's hurt, obviously. I think Ben's got hurt over the offseason for a period of time. This team has a really high defensive floor. Like that's kind of just my thing with Memphis in general. That's why this team feels like, and I'm going to, for example, like bet that over for their wins, because this just feels like a safe bet. Now, does this team has this insanely high ceiling? I mean, I guess it's to be determined, but like, for example, do I see this team winning a title? Probably not. I think how I did my power rankings, I did in tiers. They're one of the 11 teams I think could, in a best case scenario, win one. But it starts with Ja. Ja, I mean, the last time we saw him, Tyler, like last season, very, very limited sample size, obviously, but comes back, hits the game winner on the Pelicans first night back. And he goes on this insane run. He played in, 6 games in January, averaged 25 and 8 on 47% shooting. And then in the limited games he had, he played against Spurs, Raptors, and the Lakers. He had 25 and 9 in those 3 games as well. Like Ja, again, top 20 player when he's healthy. Edey, again, say what you want about him, but he's going to allow Jaren Jackson Jr. to do what Jaren Jackson does better than damn near anybody else in the league more consistently. So this Memphis team, they made a, I don't even know who they added to the staff. Forget his name. My guy, like Adam Pike, shout out to him on Twitter. He'll be able to tell me more. But they made a big overhaul to the coaching staff this summer to help out their offense, which had kind of been a little stagnant in times over the Taylor Jenkins era. And, Memphis is going to be really, really good this season. And will the conference finals berth? Probably not, but this team's going to be really, really good.
Yeah, another thing I want to add is I didn't really go into it, but they are a team that has a lot of lineup flexibility, which I think is something that gets overlooked. Like, Santi Aldama is basically a 7'3". He's basically a 7-foot small forward. He can dribble, shoot, and pass, and can switch across the board defensively. So having a guy like that as your 8th man is huge, because now you can run all types of different lineups. You could run Aldama, Clark, and Jaren Jackson, have a crazy big front line. You could run Aldama, Jaren, Edey, have a huge front line. And it's not like you're sacrificing spacing because then you can get Kennard on the floor who's like a 50% 3-point shooter.
Yeah.
I love their options, and I just hope it doesn't fall into a thing where they're just doing job pick and rolls and the offense stagnates, like you said. I hope Bane is more incorporated. Like Bane, I think
we
is
always
ready.
forget about Bane,
Yes,
not us, but like in general. Bane kind of gets
ready.
about.
I think he's ready for that on-ball responsibility. I also think they're going to be an elite transition team to like the defense to go along with John Bane. Like I think Bane might have been a top 5 transition scorer last year.
And then you talked about in the last episode the deep post seals in early offense with Edie, best positioning, arguably like Jokic, but like Edie day one's already top 10. So yeah, Memphis is gonna be a fun
Grizzlies,
watch.
and I'm a guy who's always high on the Grizzlies. Like I'll be the first to admit in that 2023 playoffs where they lost to the Lakers in the first round, I had the Grizzlies in the conference finals. I'm not gonna lie. Like I thought they were gonna break through. I wasn't expecting Anthony Davis to turn into Bill Russell and
had the best defensive series in like the last decade.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no. So I'm glad we're on the same page so far. Grizzlies and Nuggets, no disagreements. Who's your next team that you think is going to overperform?
My next team, and I did get to talk about them a ton last episode, but I did make sure I give them a little shout out. It is the Atlanta Hawks. Now, if I go on a rant here, please feel free to tell me to shut up whenever. But the Trae Young disrespect needs to stop. Like he's not a top 4 playmaker on the planet and one of the just best shot makers in general in the league. Like flat out, right? One of the best offensive engines. And people also just like to forget that Trae is a playoff riser too. You have the bad series against Miami, which I want to say he was hurt for, but and Miami also had this insane game plan for Trae too. But then you have the Eastern Conference Finals run. You have the Boston playoff series where he clutched up, had the game winner in the Garden to send things back to Atlanta with no DeJounte Murray. He also has consistently, I think people see Trae and see shot chucker, and I think, he'll take bad shots, or he'll have, I call like Josh Allen football syndrome or whatever, where he's going to have 1 to 2 plays or shots, like passes or shots a game, where you're like, Trae Young, what the hell was that? Right? Or why are we making that level of a pass? Or why are we taking that shot? But you kind of have to live with it, because that's what makes Trae special, is that he's going to pull consistently every game. He's going to pull some stuff out of his behind, literally, right? And make insane plays, because that's how good he is. Where you got a Hallie who can do that stuff, but to be kind of more efficient, if you will, and limit the turnovers, he doesn't do the Trae Young batshit crazy plays on a consistent basis. And
I think a lot of the problem with the Hawks is Trae's reputation.
Yeah.
I think Trae, after the 2021 run, kind of had the reputation that, like, I almost want to say it's kind of like what Anthony Edwards has now. Like, I vividly remember Trae getting, like, close to top 10 talks. Definitely, like, pretty unanimous top 15 on lists after that season. And it was all like, yeah, this guy just ran through an Eastern Conference gauntlet.
2 games left in the finals.
Yeah, and in the Bucks series, didn't he open the Bucks series with a near 50-11 game or something like that? Like 49-11, something like that? And it was like, oh my gosh! After that heroic Knicks series, I shouldn't say heroic. It was villainous. It was a villainous Knicks series, but we all know what series I'm talking about. I do think there are some limitations in Trae's game that show up as a lead guard. Like, I think his lack of size, when paired with the lack of explosiveness, can be a problem sometimes. He's obviously a very weak rim finisher, which makes him super volatile. And I think that kind of plays into the playoff performance. It's like when the shots are falling, those tough shots, his ceiling is so high. Like, his ceiling is pretty much the best offensive player in the league. Like the 49-11 game, not many guys can do that. But then the floor is like the Miami series. Those shots stop falling. He doesn't have the fallback option. His floor is so low. And I think people tend to gear away from the volatile guys. They'd rather have a guy with a super high floor. Like, I think Devin Booker's a good example of a guy with a really high floor because of the way he operates as a player. It's like Devin Booker's never going to go into a playoff series and have a truly awful series. Minnesota felt like a bad series for him, and he ended with like 66% true shooting. So it's like, how bad was it? And I think Trae Young doesn't have that type of floor. And that's why people are. You have some lists where he's a top 20 player. Then you have ESPN. You have Shaquille O'Neal ranking him 47th. Whatever you got going on over there.
Tyler Hero above Trae Young is nuts.
And above Donovan Mitchell. Don't forget that.
Donovan Mitchell's in the 40s?
Shaq had Donovan Mitchell 43 and Hero 40. No, actually, my bad. I don't know if that was Mitchell. One of them, because didn't Shaq have Hero 37?
Yeah, they all like absurdly ranked Tyler Hero really high.
So I think Barkley was the one with Hero 42, Mitchell 43. One of them was like that. I can't remember who it was, but yeah, it was off topic. We could do that in a different episode. But Trae Young, yeah. So I think that's the first piece of the puzzle, and I think with underrating Trae comes underrating what his skill set actually is. I think he's probably a top 5 or 6, at least, on-ball player in the league. Just means like when the ball is in his hands, creating the best offense for his team. So is he going to score in isolation like Kawhi Leonard? Of course not. But is Kawhi Leonard going to create opportunities for his team like Trae Young? Absolutely not. Which one would you rather have as your on-ball star? You tell me. I think Trae Young can spearhead a better offense if he's just dominating the ball. And that was clear from like his halfway through his rookie year that was going to be the pathway. Yeah. And it led to a Eastern Conference Finals appearance. Again, he was pretty much the only ball handler on that team. And then they went when they went and got DeJounte, it was like, okay, we want Trae to relegate some of those on-ball duties to another guy and kind of play off-ball. And then that's when the reputation tanked because Trae Young, it kind of turns out he's not that good away from the ball. And DeJounte's maybe not as good on ball as we thought, and they coexist terribly. The Hawks fall apart, and then it's like, oh, Trae Young is the 47th best player in the league, actually. No, it just means that didn't work. That little experiment didn't work. Now they're going back even more so to Trae Young dominating the ball, because look at their roster right now. Who else is going to handle the ball? Like Risa Shea, Dyson Daniels, and it's like, it's clear that Trae's their number one guy, and he's levels above anyone else in terms of touches. And people might worry about and say, hey, when you have an on-ball guy who's doing that much creating, you need a lot of spacing. But I think when you look at Trae's best skills and his biggest weaknesses, spacing isn't that big of a deal for him. Like, I think Trae's best skill is his ability to hit tight windows as a passer, and most of those are interior finds. They're not kickouts. And so if Trae's hitting tight windows as a passer on the interior, it's kind of like Russell Westbrook. Like, people say Westbrook didn't have space around him on the Thunder. Westbrook in the 2017 season didn't need space. He was going to create those interior passes every time. There's nothing you could do about it. That's kind of how I feel about Trae with the lobs and dump-offs and stuff. Capella's going to eat just how he always eats, regardless of what the other... I am too.
Please play a
I am too, but he's going to get
his start.
He's going Either one is going to get their lobs.
Yeah. And him and Jalen Johnson, great two-man game developing. Risa Shea in kind of this, reduced role year one where I think their plan is to start him, unless I'm missing something. Look, hit, catch, shoot threes, be athletic, defend a little bit. Dyson Daniels, that fit's really, really intriguing to me next to Trae, where he's not an on-ball player, but he can be a secondary playmaker where, okay, look, I have to create off the catch and I can be a decision maker at the very least. I think that's going to be important for him. I loved Kobe Buffkin coming out of Michigan, 2023 draft now. So 2 draft cycles ago, loved him coming out. He's primed to be the backup here. This Atlanta team, Quinn Snyder's an evil genius at times, most of the time even.
Yes.
This Atlanta team's fun. I think they're right in the thick of things in a playing race. I saw a list, I think, where it had them like below the Raptors, and we'll talk about them in a sec, not to spoil anything, but like putting the Hawks are firmly, in my opinion, their floor is like the 10th best team. Their ceiling, they can be like 7 or 8 if they hit their ceiling, and make some things interesting. But yeah, for me, Atlanta's my second team to really overperform expectations. They're over under actually, because I did their episode. I got to find it really quickly, but they're over under, if I recall.
No, I got you because I actually didn't even add this to my little rant. The Hawks were my second team.
Oh, okay.
For overperformer.
Yeah.
And DraftKings had them at 36 and a half.
FanDuel had them at 35.5 by the time I did. I'm like, you guys are freaking nuts. Give me that over, please.
I don't see them. I could be wrong. Like, look, we could be wrong. I don't see them winning below 40. I don't even see that as a possibility.
Then, I'm like, this team's at the bare minimum getting 38 or 39, 40. Like yeah. They're there.
Yeah. So, like I said, not only is Trey going to be the on-ball guy that gives them a high offensive floor, you mentioned Daniels, Johnson, the length around Trey. Like, we've never seen this much switchability and versatility defensively around Trey.
Yeah.
It's always kind of been like, toss in Danilo Gallinari, and it's like, and they have just enough. If they really need offense, they're starved for it. Bogdanovich is a more than capable second scorer.
Bogey's fun.
So I think Atlanta, even if it doesn't, they might be a team that doesn't translate to playoff basketball overall. But in the regular season, I do think they're being severely underrated.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad we both had them because I had a feeling when I put them down, I was like, I feel like Sean might have them, but I'm not 100% sure.
We did not talk about any of these. Like last episode, we kind of communicated. For this, we did not talk about any of these.
Right, I made sure to like say, do not tell me anything. We need to like, I want to be reacting with the viewers to what you say, and the Hawks actually reminded me of I had another team that was kind of in parentheses. I didn't choose them as an overperformer, but I kind of, when I started going about the Hawks, it reminded me of them. Because like I said with the Hawks, they might not translate to playoff basketball, but they could overperform regular season expectations. That's also kind of how I feel about the Kings.
Okay.
Because I think they kind of have a similar roster to last year, but they basically just replaced Harrison Barnes with DeMar DeRozan, and I feel like people underrate that change. Like, people are more worried about, okay, how does DeMar DeRozan fit? I think it's more about, look at what DeMar DeRozan does that Harrison Barnes can't. And look at how much higher that makes their floor as a regular season team. The Kings are a team that really overperforms their net rating because of how good they are in the clutch. They just added DeMar DeRozan. I wouldn't be surprised if they're like a neutral net rating team that wins 50 games. That's completely in play. I think last year, I actually have it pulled up right here. Last year, they had a plus 1.7 net rating. So a pretty strong positive. And they won 46 games. They had. I think the Lakers were actually the only team that overperformed their net rating even more. The Lakers were 0.5 net rating and won 47 games. Those are the two teams that really overperformed. What'd you say?
For you.
Yeah, Darvin. But yeah, basically, like, yeah, that's pretty much the king. My little king spiel. I think. Because they're so good in the clutch, because DeMar DeRozan's such an upgrade over Barnes, I wouldn't be surprised if they overperform regular season expectations, regardless of how it translates to the playoffs.
Thoughts on Sacramento maybe having to give De'Aaron 5-year, 345?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like you got to do it because that's their franchise guy. But it's tough because I love Fox's game. I think he's really underrated. I don't know if he's worth that money, but where is it worth trying to pay him less at the risk of losing him? I don't think so.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. So I guess we kind of start this off with an underperforming team. So what would be your first team that you think are going to underperform expectations?
I feel like this one is kind of not a hot take. You actually might even agree. I think it's the Spurs. I think the Spurs are the kind of the obvious one. And it's like, people are kind of putting them in the play-in playoff mix because like things are getting interesting with Wemby.
Year too early.
I just think it's a year. I think it's a year early. Yeah, I just don't see it yet. I think the roster still has so many holes. I don't think Chris Paul is a high enough impact player anymore to give you that floor-raising ability. I still view them as a bottom feeder in the West that will have competitive big games and flashes. They'll have those flashes where you're like, I see it. I see the vision. And then they're going to unravel like a 7-game losing streak, and then we're going to complain about Wemby's help, and that's just kind of how I feel. I'd love to be wrong. I'd love to be wrong about the Spurs, but I just think it's a year early.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with the Spurs team. I got a lot of crap. I have Wemby like as my 17th best player, I think. And it's like, oh man, Sean, you're too low on Wemby. You're too low on the Spurs. I'm like, dog, find me one rookie in the past like 15 years that's inside the top 20 in a player ranking, and we're all of a sudden saying, "Oh, that's too low." We're just kind of like you said, we're jumping the gun a little bit. This team, like you said, has a lot of holes still. Devin Vassell is a really fun player. I'm hoping CP can kind of help. That's actually really like my biggest priority if I'm San Antonio with Chris is, okay, it's unlocking Wemby, getting him easier touches and stuff like that, getting a real point guard in the room. But it's, okay, can we help further unlock Devin Vassell if I'm San Antonio? Stephon Castle's a winner. He'll be a fun piece here, but this seems a year away, and that's completely okay.
Yeah.
I guess my first team in this one, I don't know if this team's gotten like a lot of hype, but I got some pushback for having them a little bit lower, and that's the Raptors for me. And look, I am fully prepared to be wrong about this because there is a path to where like quickly takes that, I don't even want to say all-star jump, but he takes a significant jump to, we'll call it all-star caliber. Maybe doesn't get the berth or whatever, but he is on that tier of player. Or RJ finally has a full season of good basketball. He had a really good stretch where he got to Toronto, had a good summer.
He did.
But it's the consistency with RJ on both ends of the floor. This team on paper should be fun in the future, but I think it's going to come down to, for me with the Raptors this season, if I'm the Raptors, my biggest goal is, do I find out if, and I hope this comparison makes sense, I'm going to find out, is Scotty Barnes Lauri Markkanen or is he Kawhi Leonard? What I mean by that is he just the best number 2 option on a championship team, or is he like, no, this is the dude, and we build everything around him, and he's the guy we build like a championship team around? That's the priority. Whatever else happens, I don't care about if we don't figure out what Scotty truly is. He took a big step last year, got more on-ball touches, they enabled point Scotty, if you will. But okay, cool, that's cool finding Danny. You got to figure out, is he Kawhi or is he Lauri Markkanen? Not literally Kawhi Leonard, but like that top 10, top 15 type of player that you win a title with, or win a title because of. But like RJ and Quickly are fine. I get them paying Quickly to like kind of justify doing the OG trade, but at the time, like, I just don't see Quickly as that caliber player. Grady's fun. They have some fun pieces here. I think Darko's fine, but I don't think this team is like on the level of an Atlanta. I don't think this team. I think if both teams are fully healthy, I kind of prefer Charlotte. I'm not gonna lie. So yeah, I guess I'll throw Toronto in as my underperformer.
No, I think it's totally fair, and I would say I'm actually pretty high on Scotty, especially as projections go forward. But I don't think Scotty is the type of player, especially from a play style standpoint, that's like going to really make a bad team good. I think he's the type of guy that can make a good team great. And it's because a lot of his skill set, like you said, the Kawhi Lowry Markkanen thing, I see what you're going at. And I even would say that Scotty is more like a it's hard to explain because I don't think he's like a Draymond where it's like you got to have these offensive superstars to really unlock his game and make him like this really nice connective piece. But I do think a lot of Scotty Barnes' best traits are connective traits, like how he pushes pace, his versatile defense, his extra passing, his rebounding, all these things. And then it's like, okay, what is the floor as a scorer? I think he can become a really good scorer, a really good passer. I mean, he already is a really good scorer and passer. But I think, like, for me, he's the type of guy that, like, if I thought the Raptors without Scotty could be like a 35-win team, he could make them a 50-win team. But if they're a 20-win team without him, I don't see him making them a 45-win team or whatever. And to me, it's more about the depth than just like the top end talent on that team. I don't know how many actual NBA players they have, like at an rotation level guys. I feel like they're going to be giving a lot of minutes to guys who just frankly wouldn't be in a rotation on a playoff team. And so yeah, I wouldn't say I expect them to over or underperform, but I see where you're coming from, and I definitely agree with a lot of what you're saying. Like, I don't think they're better than the Hawks. Hornets health, you never know with the health, but like a healthy Hornets team, I also think is probably better. So, yeah, I see where you're coming from, and I actually don't think a lot of Raptors fans would push back too much just because I don't think they have expectations really. Like it sounds bad to say you think their team's going to underperform, but I don't really think the expectations are that high to begin with. Which is a perfect transition into my next take because I know expectations are high for this team, and I feel really bad saying this. But I hinted at it with my Amen Thompson thing. I feel like the Rockets there's a lot of potential for them to underperform. Like there's a lot of things that could go wrong. And I think the first thing you got to look at is what is Jalen Green going to be this year?
Yeah.
Is he going to be that month of Jalen Green, or is he going to be the exact same Jalen Green? And then if he's that exact same Jalen Green, you just simply have too many guys in the room. That young core has to, like, something has to change there. I think if it's the same old Jalen Green, something has to happen at the trade deadline. And that's where I was hinting at with my pathway to Amen Thompson being an all-star. I was like, if they are 10 games into the season, Jalen Green, it's just not working, and they move Jalen Green for, like, picks or whatever, and then Amen takes on that supremacy, I think that's the pathway. But, yeah, I just think the Rockets, there's a lot, like Van Vliet, what are we going to see from Van Vliet? I don't know how old he is.
32?
I know he's getting up there. Is he in his 30s?
Am I tripping? I think 32. Maybe I'm wrong.
30. He's
okay.
30.
All right,
30.
take some years off.
So he's 30, which, you know, it's tough to say for small guards. You never know. They could regress fast. He could play till he's 36. I don't really know, but that's another thing. I do really like Steven Adams as a backup big. I do think that's a good pickup that probably makes them better. Again, too many guys in the room. I don't think Dylan Brooks needs to be there. I don't really see. I see what they were doing with getting more veterans in the room.
Especially last
He's
year.
done his piece. He's done his piece, but I don't see it anymore. And one thing that I will say is, remember I talked about overperformers, teams with low net ratings that perform better than expected. The Rockets were the exact opposite of that spectrum. Their net rating was, let me see, plus 1.1. So they had a higher net rating than the Lakers. And they were a 500 team. And to me, that could be one of two things. That could be a complete luck thing. That could be like they just had unlucky circumstances that a few bounces of the ball would have won them 44 games. Or it means they're a funky clutch team. And I don't have the clutch numbers, but that's kind of how I feel about it, because I feel like they have a clunky. They haven't decided what they want yet. Like, is it the Şengün offense? Is it the Jalen Green offense? Is it the Van Vliet pick and roll offense? It's like when you get down to the end of games, you have to have your thing. Like Jokic and Murray 2-man game is the ideal version of that. Every team, De'Aaron Fox isolations, like Shea Gilgeous-Alexander isolations. Every team has their go-to action in clutch games, and I don't think the Rockets have that. So to me, I think they're going to underperform. I think they might. I think last year could have been an overperformance even, and then that's why they look worse this year. Maybe they win 40 games again. Maybe they're an 11 seed. I don't really know, but to me, it's just so many different things can go wrong, and it feels like they haven't committed to a direction yet.
Yeah, I think this one makes a lot of sense, especially from like Rocket fan expectations, where there's some expectations like, oh, we can win 50 games this season. I think that's drunk. But again, it's just a year too early, and I think you said it perfectly. They don't know really what they want to go with yet. I think I love Şengün. I think a lot of stuff he does offensively, especially, is super, super awesome. But like you said, like they haven't picked this true direction yet. Jalen Green, because I did a film breakdown on that 1 month, because he went like insane for that month. And if that's Jalen Green, then we need to have a different conversation about this Rockets team this upcoming season. That changes a lot, right? That makes Fred way more expendable. Like, I mean, for one, I think Fred should probably be gone after this year anyway. Just let him leave. Go to free agency, and that's where you really, really hope that Jalen can be the guy he was for that month. Because then it's okay, cool. Guard room in the future is set. Like, no doubt about it. It's Reed, it's Jalen. It's kind of the point wing, if you will, but we're set there. they have a lot of really fun individual pieces. Like Tari Eason is so fun. Jabari Smith Jr. is a good player. Like I said, Sengun.
Yep.
They have probably one of the pound for pound deepest teams in the league in general in terms of like 1 through 10. But again, kind of like you said, just picky a direction, and there are a lot of stuff that could go wrong. So I agree with that 100%. I think my next team. So I have two, I guess, dishonorable mentions. One's the Clippers, and that's, I mean, it's kind of hard to really say them because of the Kawhi thing. But even if Kawhi was healthy, I probably would throw them in here only because I think I don't think they have a lot of different ways to win. I think they have one or maybe two different ways to win, but I think you even saw it a little bit last year where if you're facing a switch-heavy team, like, it gets really, really rough for that Clippers team, particularly offensively where it's Harden. Now, if you play drop or you like put two on the ball, let Harden dice you up, it's a real challenge for you defensively because Harden can just pick you apart with his playmaking, and he can still attack drop, but like the pull up and even a floater still. Where now, if you switch with Harden at this point, he can't get by you as much, and we're just gonna live with the dribble step back offense, and nobody else is doing anything. You live with that. So especially now that Kawhi is out for an extended period of time, that's even magnified a little bit more. And then second dishonorable mention, I don't like the Cavs. That's kind of been my running thing of the offseason. I do not like Cleveland.
That's interesting.
I like the players individually. Like I like Jarrett. I love Evan. I love Donovan. I really like Darius Garland. I just think the fits are still a little clunky, and if we stack them up against the rest of the Eastern Conference teams, I'm taking for sure 5 teams over them. And then there's a 6 team in Orlando that I'm like, yeah, I probably still prefer Orlando over Cleveland. So that I don't even have like the best reason for Cleveland. It's more of a gut thing. And like I said, I take 6 teams in the East over them. So yeah, those are two dishonorables.
Interesting. Yeah. So my thing with the Clippers specifically that you mentioned, I agree with what you're saying about the switch-heavy teams. I will say, I think the Clippers are on the overperforming side of the spectrum if you only are looking at the regular season. I think they won 51 games last year, and I don't think the moves they made are like where Paul George compared to these other guys is the difference between 51 wins and then I think they're set at like 35 and a half or 36 and a half or something like that.
Too low.
Yeah, and I think Kawhi Leonard's injury is playing into that, and that might be the case. I think some of that, too, is underrating the fact that while regressed, Harden is still a masterful on-ball floor raiser, and I think, like, it's hard for me to see a James Harden team winning 36 games. But, yeah, I agree in the playoffs. Like, I think if the Clippers find a way to sneak into the playoffs, I don't really view them as a threat to any top team, even with Kawhi. And it's like you said, like, they don't have that. I talked about the importance of lineup flexibility, also scheme flexibility, and the Clippers kind of lack both. They lack both, and I think that's a serious problem. The Cavs I find particularly fascinating because I would actually say, honestly, similar thing to what you kind of said with the Clippers, or what I even said about the Clippers. I'm pretty high on the Cavs just from a regular season standpoint. But when push comes to shove in the playoffs, I love Donovan Mitchell. Like, I think Donovan Mitchell is one of the most underrated players of the 2020s. I think Darius Garland, before the jaw injury, again, was a criminally underrated offensive player. Like, kind of simulates a lot of what Trae Young does, if not, like, not with the volume, like, with a little bit less volume. I love Allen and Mobley both separately. I still don't know about that fit. Yep. And to me, it's again bringing us back to the Rockets. Like, pick a direction and get rid of all this clunkiness. Like, are the Cavs? I don't think Mobley and Allen, and Mobley looks really good in preseason. He might take a leap. I don't know if that pairing is a championship caliber pairing. And there are guys in the Cavs that I love, like Dean Wade. I am probably the biggest Dean Wade fan. I'm probably the big, like, people don't know about Dean Wade. Every single GM in the league would be salivating at the idea of getting Dean Wade. Like, that is a guy. I love Dean Wade. I also love Isaac Okoro, especially since he took a shooting leap last year. But yeah, it's the same thing. It's like they have a little bit more lineup flexibility because they have two guys who can play the one at a high level and two guys who can play the five at a high level. Their wing depth is very questionable at best, and there's just clunky fits. Like that time that during the season they unraveled like a 17-1 stretch, and it was without both. Was it without both Garland and Mobley? I know one of them was out for sure. It might have been both of them. Donovan Mitchell was the one, Allen was the five, Dean Wade was the four, and Sam Merrill was playing big minutes, and they were running a motion offense, and it was beautiful basketball. I was like, oh my gosh, the Cavs are so good. Garland and Mobley came back, and it was like they didn't do that anymore, and it's because the clunkiness. And I think, yeah, same thing with the Rockets. I get where you're coming from. I'm a Cavs guy, but I see the vision. I see the clunkiness. They need to pick a direction if they want to really get competitive in the playoffs.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, I don't know how you do this now. You gave him an extension, but like, let's trade Allen, let's get some stuff. Let's trade Garland, let's get some stuff. Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, this is your team. We're going to fully commit to building around you two and maximizing your guys. I would feel way better about this Cavs team.
Yeah, and I just want to throw another team out there. I didn't have them on my list, but it's just something that's been in the back of my head. I've been high on them 2021, 2023, and 2024. The Pelicans.
Okay.
I don't like the new fit. I don't like the fit with the new roster. I don't like the fact that they don't really have a center that they can rely on heavily right now. I think the fact that they're trying to start McCollum is really interesting and weird. I think most of my concerns comes from the fact, I don't know if you could tell in my Hawks segment, I don't think DeJounte Murray is the caliber of player that he's made out to be. Mm-hmm. And I think teams continue to treat him as that caliber of player. I think that one All-Star season with the Spurs did so much for him because it was a team with low expectations. He was expected to be like a heliocentric player, and he could give you the box score. Like, he could give you the 22 points and the 9 assists. He wouldn't turn the ball over. He'd give you like 2 steals a game. And it's like, look at this two-way guard who's like really raising the floor of this bottom-feeding team. And then it's like, okay, let's look at the efficiency. Let's look at the fact that he's only trying on defensive possessions when he's going to get a steal. And then let's look at the last 2 years of Atlanta Hawks basketball where he's had big moments, clutch moments, but like consistently, it's like, I don't know if it's selective viewing, what it is. I don't want to just hate on DeJounte Murray because I feel bad doing it. I don't like being negative. But I hate being negative, but like, it was such selective watching. He would have a stretch of really bad, really inefficient games, not in the media. He'd have one 44-point game, and everyone's like, look, Trey's holding him back. And it's like, okay, man, enough already. And then they just added him to a team that already has Brandon Ingram. Brandon Ingram is basically a 7-foot version of DeJounte Murray. I don't know what we're doing. I love the Pelicans. I'm leader of the Zion Williamson fan club, and I'm even low on them just because of it's the same thing, clunky fit. I don't see the vision.
I'm kind of just indifferent about the Pelicans. I don't have I love Herb Jones, but I still have PTSD from Zion in the play-in against the Lakers last season where he went just berserk. I'm just feeling different. Like, I think Willie Green's fine. I think they're just weird. I love Herb. I love Zion. I love Jordan Hawkins, one of my guys in that draft class. Trey Murphy's a stud, but I mean, just in general, I'm kind of just indifferent about the Pelicans.
For sure. Any last thoughts on over or underperformers, or should we just keep moving?
I mean, I guess one last shout. Don't want to spend too much time on them. I think, and this is more underperforming, I want to throw Dallas in there. I fully acknowledge that Luka Doncic is like the best on-ball offensive player in the league. I fully acknowledge that. But, and I'm not trying to like say this team isn't one of the 5 best teams in the West, but I think immediately catapulting this team above a Denver, for an example, or dare I say even like a Minnesota maybe, right? I think is just jumping the gun a little bit where like, okay, Clay is going to add some stuff for them, but I mean, PJ Washington is our best like wing stopper or just on ball defensive player in a likely starting five. My kind of thing is I think Najee really needs to be I don't know how you get there, essentially. So I'm more wait and see with Dallas, if that makes sense. I'm not fully throwing them in underperforming. I'm still very much waiting to see. Luke is the best offensive player in the league. Kyrie's still awesome. Derek Lively, again, kind of part of we're jumping the gun thing just a little bit. He's a really good basketball player. But you look at some of the list, and, I mean, what was he, 30 spots ahead of Hartenstein or something like that?
Yeah, it was. I think it was 31.
Yeah, 31
spots
spots above Hartenstein. Just calm down a little bit. Let's see Dallas play the first 20 games of the year before we assume that this team's coming out of the West. So, wait and see mode on Dallas.
I take a lot of what you said. I'm storing it in here. We'll get back to it because I want to talk about the Mavs a little bit more. But for now, let's go on to. I want to talk about awards. I don't want to spend too much time on awards because it's kind of just like a shot in the dark. You kind of have a little bit of expectation. I kind of want to just like get a little bit into philosophy, and then just like let's just make our picks. As simple as that. First thing I want to talk about is actually Defensive Player of the Year.
Okay.
Because I think it's really interesting. I know someone posted a screenshot recently on Twitter of betting odds, and Wembanyama was actually above 500 odds. He was negative. Like, it wasn't a 50-50 return. He was like a negative 115 on the betting odds. And my mind immediately goes to, I think the last player to win Defensive Player of the Year on a non-top 5 defense was Marcus Camby in 07.
Shout out.
Which is like unanimously one of the worst picks ever. I don't think it doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. And I get that Wemby's unprecedented. Like I said, I expect them to be an underperformer. And that could mean 30 wins. That could mean 29 wins. And a lot of the reason for that is the fact that they don't have a good team defense still. They didn't really do much. They added Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes, neither of which are positive defenders at this point. So it's like, why are we expecting them to go from like the number 27 or whatever defense to a top 5 one? Because they would have, at the very least, have to be above average. They're not going to give it to a guy in a negative defense. So for me, that's kind of absurd. Like, Wemby might be the best defender in the league next season. I don't see him winning the award because of how historical precedent has been set. It'd be like a player winning MVP and missing the playoffs.
Yeah.
That's basically what it would be. And it's like, I don't see that happening. So when I look at who I think is going to win Defensive Player of the Year, I think there's a very serious chance Gobert deserves number 5. I don't think that's even a possibility. Same thing with Wemby. Like, I don't think, even if Minnesota has far and away the number 1 defense, Gobert wins all the analytics, I don't think they will give him number 5 and be like, yeah, this guy is the mountaintop of Defensive Player of the Years more than anyone ever. I don't see it. So my mind goes to, all right, I'm going to look around the league for potential top 5 defenses and like look at some of those players. And I think like some of the top defenses kind of have guys that are off limits. Like, I think Boston might have the number 2 or 3 defense. I don't think they have anyone that would stand out and get votes. Because it's kind of like a team effort thing. Like I said, Minnesota will probably be number 1, but I don't see Gobert winning it. So I'm looking for other top 5 defenses and looking at their players. So I'm looking at Cleveland, we just talked about. They are pretty consistently a threat to be a top 3 defense. Evan Mobley could get that nod. OKC, I want to say Caruso. It could be in the discussion, but it'll probably just be a Chet thing. If OKC is the number 1 or 2 defense, Chet's going to get a lot of credit. Triple J in Memphis. We just talked about Memphis having a super high defensive floor. Could he win number 2? Especially now that he's exclusively going to be roaming. But ultimately, my pick, I don't know how you feel about this, but I think Miami's probably going to have a top 5 defense, at the very least 6 or 7. I think this is the year. Give me Bam Adebayo. Give me Bam for Defensive Player of the Year.
Bam is my pick. Bam's my pick. As much as like the Laker homer wants me to say AD, and I still think AD is the best defensive player on the planet, the Lakers defense worries me. And if Anthony Davis somehow drags that defense to like the 15th best defense in the league, they'd give him the award, because that defense is bad, especially with not knowing when Vando's going to come back. That defense is really, really bad. But for the time being, like, Bam, in my opinion, is like should be at least right now still consistently a top 3 defender in the league, and he deserves it. He doesn't have this overwhelming like defense or shot blocking ability or rim protection ability to a certain extent, like a AD, a Wemby, or a Gobert does, but he is that defense. Him and Spo being the mad scientist, and then Bam being able to do literally everything for them is what kind of enables that. If you want to roll through these, like go through and just like pick by pick.
We could, yeah. I actually, real quick before we do that, I wanted to throw out another philosophical point about an award.
Most improved.
And this could actually really go for Rookie of the Year and Sixth Man of the Year. I kind of had them in a similar group. It was when we're asking who's going to win this award, how do we even define it? Because I feel like it shifts, like the criteria shifts every year. It's like, okay, is it the most impactful rookie? Is it the rookie with the most flashes? Or is it the rookie with the biggest box score? Because it could be any of the three. And, like, I think Edey is going to be pretty considerably the most impactful rookie, especially if the Grizzlies win 50 games. But is he going to have a gaudy box score, or is he going to be 10 and 8 a game? I don't know. Same thing with Sixth Man of the Year. Is it the best scorer off the bench, or is it the most impactful player off the bench? Because it usually just goes to the best scorer off the bench. But, like, if Alex Caruso doesn't start, he's pretty easily going to be the most impactful player off the bench. I don't know how you feel about that, but it's just like, I think the philosophy of the awards is pretty interesting. But, yeah, let's just go award by award. We'll go back and forth. And we'll just do like a quick spark notes of whatever. So MVP, I got Shea. Yeah, I expect the Thunder to win 60-plus games, and I think he runs away with it. It's like, we talked about 2015 Warriors, Steph Curry. We went into this last episode if anyone wants to check that out. But, yeah, we're on the same page there. Rookie of the Year, I couldn't really land on anyone. I want to hear what you say first. I couldn't.
I want Reed Shepherd.
I don't know.
I want Reed Shepherd, personally.
Okay, I see it. I think I'm going to go with Zach Edey just because, like I said, I think he's going to be the most impactful rookie. Yeah, I don't really have a strong opinion there. Sixth Man of the Year, I ran into that philosophical issue. I'm looking at Malik Monk, Naz Reid, DiVincenzo. What if CJ McCollum ends up coming off the bench? Will he be a 20-point-per-game scorer off the bench? I'm going to stick with my Caruso pick, though. If Caruso comes off the bench, I think they have to give it to him.
I love the Caruso
So who'd you go with?
Especially if you go with, like, the impactful nod. I went Malik because I just think that, like...
Fair. Totally fair.
Yeah, I went Malik Monk. Coach of the Year, who'd you go with this one?
Okay, so I just love the philosophy behind awards. Coach of the Year always goes to a team that overperforms their expectations. Okay. So it doesn't matter if it's a 50-win team, a 45-win team. It's always a team that overperforms Vegas. So I actually just went with the two coaches of the teams that I expected to overperform, Taylor Jenkins and Quinn Snyder. I was like, I think it's going to be one of those two. I'm just going to stick with my overperformers.
All right, so I actually didn't look at that. But I do kind of have like a kind of an idea for this one. So I went Chris Finch, but I think there's so much bad PR with the Timberwolves because of the cat trade, where I think people are kind of expecting them to underperform a little bit. Where I'm like let this team be a top 4, top 3 seed again, then Finch can very easily kind of walk his way back into those combos. I mean, it's going to be hard not to give it to Dagnall if they do win 60-plus games like we kind of both see them doing it. But I'll go with Finch. It kind of be different here.
Totally fair. And, I see the vision there, and I see what you're saying about the PR point. Like, it's just like a narrative thing. Most improved player, who you thinking about?
I went Jonathan Kuminga, personally. Ooh. Or like a Jalen Johnson, because if Jalen Johnson was healthy last year, he would have ran away with the award. Although this is the award that I have the biggest issue with. Like, Tyrese Maxey, love you, should not have won Most Improved Player last season. Tyrese Maxey won the everybody predicted the breakout award. Like, everybody, like, he took the jump to being a lead guard, but that's really just because he didn't have heart in there. So the volume was just increased. Like, it was like Maxey was this, he took this big, like a Kobe White, which we kind of saw in season, for example, or even a Jalen Johnson, he didn't qualify because of injury, where, this guy took a noticeable leap from year to year, and it wasn't because of volume. It was because this guy made big increases in their development, where Maxey, not necessarily taking away any credit, Maxi's was, oh, look, this ultra efficient, like on-ball player isn't here anymore. Cool. So now it's on me. Cool. Now I'm going to ramp up and show you guys what I got. And he averaged 26 last season at like a 6-point increase. So, but for me, it's Kuminga. Like, it just makes more sense.
I see where you're going. Yes, I see where you're coming from. And interestingly enough, that makes me think, like, for a few years now, besides Markkanen, I feel like the award's been given to a guy who, like, everyone kind of projected to break out eventually, and it's like that was the year that they
it's like Jalen Green.
And it's not always just like
if Jalen Green won it for some reason, that would be that.
So I was gonna say, I think Cade is a really interesting one for like same line of thinking as like a John Morant, like he's a former number 1 pick, and this is like the year they take elite. Pistons win 35, 40 games, whatever. Yeah. That could be the pathway, but actually, I was kind of scared. I don't want to promote anything. I was kind of scared to say my pick because I saw how good the odds were on the DraftKings. It's plus 8,000, and I was like, oh, I'm going to cash in on this. So, have you ever seen Most Improved Player account for a playoff leap from the previous year? Because I think this player already took the leap during the playoffs last year, but his regular season numbers were so low that this year he's just going to do what he did in the playoffs and win it.
I feel like I'm overthinking this. Am I overthinking this?
I don't know. Do you have any idea who I'm talking about?
No, so I feel like I'm overthinking this.
He averaged 9 points and 4 assists last year.
In the regular season?
And in the playoffs. Yeah, in the regular season. And in the playoffs, he averaged 15 and 6.
Oh, wait, is this DiVincenzo? No.
No, it's not. Andrew Nembhard.
I'm so mad.
I love Nembhard.
I'm so mad.
Andrew Nembhard. I think he's gonna be the most improved player, and it's gonna be like he's just doing what he did in the playoffs. And I don't know how he's plus 8,000, but I'm putting I don't know how much money I'm gonna put down, but I'm locking that in. And if that hits, I don't know what I'll do. I'm loving.
Might have to make a futures bet on that. I'm mad. Because I love Nembhard.
Loving the odds on that. I love his game. Love his game.
I'm mad. I'm mad at myself.
Well, we got one more award. Easily the most unpredictable award, somehow more unpredictable than most improved player. Clutch player of the year, because at the end of the day, I know to some extent there's like a clutch gene, but a lot of it is just like a tiny sample size, and it's like luck. It's a lot of luck is involved. It's like who made the shots and who missed the shots. And so I did a little bit of a cheeky pick, and I was like, okay, who's always at the top of the league in clutch scoring? DeMar DeRozan. So I was like, okay, DeMar DeRozan, you're my pick. You get a lot of game winners. You're always
somebody on the Kings.
I don't know how you feel about that.
Give me De'Aaron or give me DeMar. Yeah. I didn't even think about this. So, I didn't even notice that we had this on here. So yeah, give me one of the Kings guys.
Yeah. I didn't even I put it on there with a question mark. I was like, should we even talk about the clutch player of the year? Because I know some people like to get into it, but it's really luck. Yeah. A lot of it is luck. Okay, so next I wanted to talk about power rankings, but I actually didn't go past number 5. So I kind of want to just talk about, I don't know if you ranked all 15. I know you're doing a series, so we could just keep that for your YouTube series. Everyone go check that out. Shout yourself out real quick.
Sports Headline Show. So I'm not going to be able to finish the series before this time of the regular season, so we're good. We can just dive into, I did 5. I did top 5 for each, although I do have like a full one.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah, so he's got his Sports Headline on YouTube, Sports Headline Show. He's been doing his power rankings. And if you want to go see the absolute sickos that are watching this, if you want to go see the power rankings of the Pistons, Raptors, Nets, Spurs, you go check that out.
As you can imagine,
but we're going to keep it to the top.
As you can imagine, that Nets episode was a drag to get through.
But yeah, we're gonna keep it to the top teams. You go ahead. I want to hear you count down from 5. Your Eastern Conference picks.
Okay, so my Eastern Conference picks. Number 5 for me, I have the Indiana Pacers. I'll kind of, be quick with each of these two. Pacers, Hallie's a superstar, and I think, the injury kind of derailed some of, his reputation to a certain extent, where legitimately before the injury, he was, the 3rd best point guard on the planet. I think they reloaded. They're bringing the team back, and I think there's some hope for internal development here. Fourth, I do have Milwaukee. Milwaukee's title hopes hinge on, is Damian Lillard like the same guy, or like are the injuries going to continue to pile up? Is the Dame Giannis fit going to kind of continue to be pretty inconsistent? Or are they going to figure things out? Dame's going to get back healthy. I think they're like marginally better elsewhere. It's really just, in my opinion, going to come down to like it's Dame, and is the fit going to be consistent throughout the year? Third for me is Philly. I think they have some depth concerns in my opinion, but Embiid, I don't understand like why it's like super weird and the cool thing to do to pretend Embiid's like not a top 5 player on the planet. That's really weird to me.
I hate it.
Maxey's a stud, like we already talked about. Paul George now goes from being a really good number 2 to like the best number 3 option in the league.
Yep.
Nurse is a good coach. I really like the Sixers. Number 2 for me is the Knicks. I don't know what the hell Mikal Bridges did to his jumper, but besides the point, this Knicks team's still really, really good. Brunson is like a fringe top 10 player. I mean, I could see it between like 9 to like 15, anywhere between there. Like I'm perfectly fine with. That team's a really, really good team. And then, I mean, number 1's Boston. Like, they're still the best team in the league.
Yeah.
Tatum's a top 10 player. Again, don't understand why it's a cool thing to do to over and underrate Tatum. Like, Tatum will be, like, number 5, and then Tatum will be 15. I'm like, what are we doing? He's comfortably, like, 8 or 9, maybe even 10. But, so, yeah, that's my top 5 for me.
Yeah, I had the same 5 teams. I think number 5, I looked at Cavs, Magic, and Heat. But ultimately landed on the Pacers because of their just superhuman offense, and especially like how many primed young talent they have for leap or for a leap. And I would also say the Pacers, probably top to bottom, have the most NBA level players in the league. Like they legitimately have like 12 NBA players, and it's like
maybe more.
Yeah, they have so many good players, and all of them are talented offensively. They can all shoot, dribble, pass. Yeah, I think the Pacers are they're just gonna steamroll a lot of teams, and I don't think they're an actual like contending threat, but I think they can like give every team in the league a serious headache in a playoff series, even if they're like not a threat to beat them. Like besides Boston, I guess Boston didn't really have a headache with them last year, but they had the injuries and stuff. Halliburton got hurt. Like I think a fully healthy Pacers squad would just like really make the Celtics uncomfortable.
Yeah. They're gonna
even if it's like a
overwhelm you.
5-game series. Yeah, exactly. So my next 3, like I said, same. 4, I actually had the Knicks.
Okay.
And I have in parentheses here, Mikhail's jumper with a bunch of question marks. What is that? If he's genuinely not a good shooter anymore, that team, that floor is all the way down. Because they need him to be a shooter for them. And then my biggest concern with New York is the lack of depth. It's the exact opposite of the Pacers. I don't know how many NBA players they have, past like 7.
Yeah.
My number 3 is the 76ers. I have an injury question mark. I think you hit it on the head with everything you said. I think I'm more concerned about them in a playoff series because I don't like the passing on the roster. I think by far their best passer is Kyle Lowry. And is their second best passer Joel Embiid?
Probably, and then Maxey's like 3. Like Maxey takes another lead. I can get that.
I don't like that, and so I think they're a 2022 Lonzo Ball away from being a Boston close to Boston, but without the passer, and also in addition to lacking passing, they don't have good point of attack defense.
Yeah,
and those are 2 really important playoff traits. So I think they're a team that could win 60 games in the regular season if Embiid played. But Embiid's not going to play back to backs. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, that takes out 15 games off rip. I think somebody put that out there.
So I got them 3. I think that regular season wise they'll probably be 2.
Yeah,
but playoffs considered, I got Milwaukee over them at 2. And to me, the Milwaukee thing is interesting because I think people forget. I had Giannis in my season rankings. I had him number 2 last year. I still think he's a top 2 player in the world.
Same.
I think he gets underrated because he hasn't played in a healthy playoff series since 2022 against Boston.
And he got hurt in that one even, didn't he? Oh, no, that was when everybody else got hurt.
Yeah, that was whenever it was just him. It was just him, and he was averaging like 35 a game. And like he's pretty much guaranteed to be a 30, 12, and 6 guy. I do think one thing that gets overlooked with Giannis is he doesn't actually play that many regular season games. every year. Like last year, he played like 67. No, he played 73 last year. He played 73 last year, but before that, he hadn't played 70 in a season since he was an MVP. So I think he tends to miss a lot of games which people kind of overlook. But to me, the big thing is per cleaning the glass. Of all the lineups with at least 500 minutes played, or 500 possessions, 500 possessions played, the highest net rating was Dame, Beasley, Middleton, Giannis, and Lopez at like plus 13.5 or plus 15 or something like that. Like they were crazy good. The second best 5-man lineup was one of Orlando's units with Suggs, Wagner, Paolo, and 2 other guys. And then the third best lineup was the same Bucks lineup except with Crowder instead of Middleton. And so it's like, okay, when this team is at full strength, they've got their guys. That is a team that's performing like a 60-win team. So unless you think they're like gonna collapse in the playoffs, which I don't see happening, at least offensively, defense leaves a lot to be desired. Again, Alonzo Ball away from being a tier 1 team. Let's just make 30 Lonzo Balls and just put them on each team and
see who wins
and just like see what happens. See what happens. But I think the Bucks are number 2, and then number 1 goes without saying. I'm not even gonna say the team's name. We all know who number 1 is. All right, for the West. West I think is actually a bit more. I think West is a little bit more interesting because I think East you have like a hierarchy. West is like, okay, we're just gonna name some teams, and we'll probably have something similar. But I want to hear what you got. What's your top 5 looking like?
So I'm actually gonna start 6, 7, 8 because I think this gives it a little bit interesting. Okay. So for me, 8, I have the Pelicans 8. I have Pelicans/Kings. I don't really care. 7, I have the Lakers. I think it's going to take some time, but I think once they get Vando back, once things really start to click with JJ, I think this team's going to be like this. Not to go to Lakers tangent here, but the Lakers have a really good floor in the regular season with this roster. They've been like on pace to be a 50-win team each of the past 2 seasons when they played their core guys and when they've been healthy. And then 6, I have Phoenix. I like Phoenix. I don't want to overrate them though. I'm starting to see like people have spicy takes picking the Suns to win the finals. I'm like, all right, we are going really we're going left. We're going left just to say that. All right, so for me, fifth I have Memphis, and it's kind of tough. I didn't know where to slide Memphis at, but like we kind of said earlier and throughout the past 2 episodes now, this team's a 50-win team. And I view the West kind of like how it was back in 2010, where your like 8th seed is a 49-50-win team. Like that's how good the West is this year. So don't get attached to the spots. I think it's like Memphis is going to be a 50-ish win team, maybe a little bit more, but they're going to be, for me, like right around 4, maybe even 5, like I have them here. 4th, I have Dallas. I will say this. I do trust them a little bit more come playoff time because I think Luka's just maybe besides Jokic, like Jokic post-ups and things like not maybe, definitely like Jokic post-ups and things like that. Luka's like the second biggest problem for an opposing defense in the NBA, especially in a 7-game series, like having a game plan for that. So I got Dallas 4th. I think the regular season defense is going to really struggle too. So I have Dallas 4th. 3rd, I have Minnesota. I think Ant takes that like real top 10 leap. I think he's like closer to 20 than he is 10. I don't know if that's a hot take right now. I think he's a lot.
I would say.
I think he's closer to 20. I mean, but I have him like, I don't even remember. But I think he's closer to 20. We'll just say that, right? But taking that real top 10 leap this season, Randall's going to actually add a lot of stuff to what they've missed with some secondary playmaking ability, more driving ability to the paint and things like that. And obviously, Rudy's a freak defensively. DiVincenzo, talked about this last episode. What if he just kind of takes a random leap out of nowhere and becomes an even better player? So I really like Minnesota's floor. This is going to be a really good team. Number 2, Denver. Like we said earlier, let's not overthink Denver. They have the best player on the planet. They have the best like 4-man combination, I'll even go to say, it on the planet. And then, number 1's OKC. 2015 Golden State Warriors. This is, in my opinion, the best team on paper in the entire league.
Interesting. Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of ways you can go with the West, and we ended up having damn near bar for bar, the same list. I had 1 Thunder, 2 Nuggets, 5 Grizzlies.
Okay.
I swapped Minnesota and
Okay.
Dallas. And I tried not to over-index on the matchup thing because I just think Dallas is a bad matchup for Minnesota, and like maybe that's baked into the back of my head somehow. But when I was putting this together, I think a lot of people's opinion on Dallas is that they were an underdog in the playoffs, and that playoff run kind of came out of nowhere, and forget how good they still were in the regular season after making the PJ and Gafford trades. They went 21-8 with PJ and Gafford in the lineup, which is a 59 win pace. So 59-23, that's the type of team that would go to the finals. They might have very well been the best team in the West after that trade. Now we'll have to see if they can sustain it over an entire season. I think the Derrick Jones Jr. question, we kind of talked about this off screen in text. It was like people are looking at, okay, Najee Marshall replaces a lot of what Derrick Jones brought defensively. Clay replaces, just brings a whole new offensive dimension. But you can't have Najee and Clay, like, you can't have both of their qualities at the same time. There's only 5 players on the floor. If they could have 6 players on the floor, yeah, the Mavs would probably be a 79-win team. But that's not how the sport works. So when you're talking about, they're not going to start Najee over Clay. That's not going to happen. I don't think that happens. I don't even think there's a chance that happens. Could be wrong. But Clay's going to be their 3, which means, like you said, in their lineup, PJ is their go-to guy at the point of attack. Now that means Clay's your secondary rim protector, or Luka is your secondary rim protector instead of PJ Washington. The PJ Derrick Jones dynamic just gave you such a nice, like, 1-2 defensive punch, like Jones on the ball, PJ on the back line. PJ on the ball, Jones on the back line. Lively in the middle, Gafford in the middle. And I think it's like, if Clay was still the same type of defender he was before the injury, yeah, I'd feel great about the Mavs. Even if his offense was the same as it is now. Like, if he was the same level defender, I'd feel great. Yeah. If I knew Clay was going to be a 6th man and Najee was going to be a 40% three-point shooter, I'd feel phenomenal. I think Najee's like an S-tier role player besides the shooting. But yeah, I still think they are not only winning the matchups with Minnesota, I just think they are better than we gave them credit for because it came in the end of the season. But yeah, like I said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we have the same teams. I didn't go past that, but we'd probably have the same team still. I think I'm just going to throw, because you didn't even mention them. I didn't mention them. I wouldn't be surprised. I guess this is, we'll rewind the clock to the hot take section. I wouldn't be surprised if Golden State's just really good for no reason.
Yeah. So
it wouldn't shock me.
Kind of my take with the Warriors is, I think actually this is the deepest team they've had in a while. Like, I would even argue in terms like functional NBA players, this is a deeper team than their title win in 22.
That's fair. Totally
Steph
fair.
was just like the second best or third best player in the league and just carried that team to a finals win. Poole was nice. Draymond had a great defensive run, obviously, but like Steph was the guy. Where this year's team, it's okay. Steph's still amazing, still like top 10 dude, but okay, we have Pods, who they have the just most drunk belief in, to the point where they're going to pass up on this really good player who's the perfect fit for their scheme. No, we're going to believe in Pods. But anyway, Pods, Kuminga. And I'm with you if Kuminga kind of takes that most improved leap. If he doesn't take that most improved leap, I don't see them making the playoffs. That's kind of my stance on Golden State.
For sure. Well, now that we've hit 7 hours on the podcast, we can go ahead and just wrap it up with I think we're gonna have the same. It's finals prediction and winner. I got, just throwing it out there, I got the Celtics over the Thunder.
I have the Thunder over the Celtics. I think.
Ooh.
I'm full on the bandwagon. I have a tweet from 2023, like mid-season, this without even seeing a game of Chet. I said 2024 conference finals was Thunder Lakers or something. Clearly botched the Lakers pick, but Thunder 2 games away. But the point was, like, this Thunder team is going to be that good, and yeah, they're gonna win a Lombardi, and SGA is gonna win. I said Lombardi? No. Oh my god,
that's crazy.
That's insane.
I thought, dude, at first I thought that was on purpose. I was like, oh, is he spitting some bars right now?
No,
That's
they're going to
crazy.
win, and SGA is going to win Finals MVP. So yeah, they're just going to
I
complete
respect it, and I'm glad. I'm glad you said that because I can't commit. Like I want so badly to commit to the Thunder. And I think like if Porzingis continues to have these really bad injury problems, like I don't think they needed Porzingis much of last playoff run. If they end up facing OKC in the finals, they will
would
need
need
Porzingis, I
Porzingis.
think. And so that's a variable to think about. And yeah, I just can't commit. I'm not bold enough. I just don't got it in me. I'm not built for the moment like you are clearly. So I'm still riding with the Celtics, but yeah, that's I love that.
Who's the
Any last
who's
thoughts?
the one team for each? Who's the one team in each conference that can knock one of the Celtics or Thunder off? You think to prevent that matchup from happening?
Celtics, I'm definitely more confident in Milwaukee than in any of the teams. Like just
Sure.
off of sheer Giannis power
Yeah.
alone. And Dame, it would take a classic Dame
Yeah.
series, and then Giannis being Giannis. That's like just pushes them over the threshold. Now again, that's like I'm like 80-20 confident in Boston. But like if there was a team, I think it's Milwaukee. And then in the West for OKC, I'm gonna go with probably Dallas. I just think same thing as last year. Like they just outperform. I don't mean overperform. They just outperform OKC start to finish.
But no, yeah, this was fun. Really excited for the season to get started in like 30 hours from the time of this. Oh, wait, a little bit
Yeah, I was
less.
gonna say like by the time this drops, it'll be yeah 1 day and then like another few
Yeah.
hours until the season starts. So yeah, man, we got 30 hours for this to sit. We look okay, and then we look stupid.
Immediately.
30. So we got 30 hours of victory lapping, of getting our takes out there, and then it's
There
over.
we go.
But yeah, appreciate you, Sean. Of course, always appreciate your time. Appreciate everyone, all two of you who are still watching and listening. You're a real one if you're still here. Make sure you follow us on Twitter. His Twitter is Sean_Davis without an S at the end. So
Shout out to
Sean
that guy.
underscore DAVI. Mine's Tyler Britton underscore. Subscribe to this channel. Follow us on Spotify, wherever you're listening. Leave a 5-star review. You know, all the good stuff. But really appreciate you listening. We'll catch up with you guys probably a few days after the regular season starts, and we were able to make a little bit more educated takes. But yeah, man. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.